Today, you'll gain insight about City Communications offering and how they can help you to save money and to also learn about the right solutions. My name is Erica, and before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. Okay, so please note that we are recording today's session. Access to the recorded presentation as well as a deck will be provided following today's session. Please use the Q&A button that's located at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. You do not have to wait till the end. We will be answering them though at the end of the presentation and concluding with a brief Q&A. So I would like to introduce our presenters. We have Kristen Kellis. She is the Business Development Manager at City Communications, and her colleague Jake Peterson is also joining her, and he functions as partner at City Communications. So thank you to both of you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to meet with us today. We know you're all really busy, and I'm confident that at the end of it, you will feel like this was a productive use of your time. So here's our agenda. It'll be fairly brief, but offer you enough information for you to take with you, and hopefully we can help you save time and money, as the title says. So we are going to go over how we do that, people that we partner with in order to save you time and money, some of the products that we serve, and how to get started in that. And as Erica mentioned, we'll do Q&A at the end. So about City, this is our team. We've been in business for 20 years. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona, made up of a few partners, myself in sales, and some project managers. We have a team of experts in this field in telecom and communication services, and we help analyze, implement, and manage products in UCaaS, in other words, voice over IP contact center applications. Carrier services, so that meaning your internet, right? Anything surrounding internet. We work with, the Comcasts of the world, Spectrums, if you will, along with mobility, which essentially just translates loosely to wireless, cell phones, tablets, things of that sort. And we'll kind of get in a little bit more into how we do that. So the easiest way to basically explain this in all of those areas that I just mentioned, we'll do technology reviews for BIMAX members. So what we do is audit your existing communication services, anything that you pay a bill for, essentially for technology. We can do a review, see if there's areas of opportunity for savings. If potentially you need new technology, meaning you're outgrowing, you may be growing rapidly and need to kind of look at different ways to communicate with your techs on the field or your employees. Maybe you need some analytics or visibility kind of on that communication. We can help you source those services. And we do that by partnering with all of the carriers for those services. So for your voice over IP, for your internet, for your wireless, we essentially go to bid for you. So we partner with all of them. We are a consulting team. We act as advocates on your behalf and reach out to the carriers essentially for you. If you've ever had to implement technology, I'll just use voice over IP for an example, because sometimes it's not the easiest process. You may have had to have multiple sales meetings, right, with 3 different carriers, and you've got to figure out who the best service is in your area for whatever you may need. We kind of take that off of your plate. So instead of you having to have 3 different sales meetings, we actually vet those services out for you. And then in addition, help you negotiate those rates with those carriers to save you money on that.
And And I think I was going to chime in. I think, one of the differentiators for city communications versus some other options is not only helping on that front end. So when you're trying to make decisions, save money, compare options, but even more importantly on the back end. So sometimes people get a little bit concerned about, the transition. How long is it going to take? Do I even have people that can be assigned to do that? So we assign a project manager for each and every order, and so we're there to kind of handhold those orders all the way through completion. So that's working with, if you've got existing vendors that we need to coordinate with, if you've got your internal IT person or something like that, and then also the vendors. So it's not that we're just helping you pick a solution, sell it, and then turn it over. We're actually taking it all the way through the whole process. And then even on the back end of that, making sure that everything got billed correctly. And if it didn't, we're chasing that down to get that resolved too. So really try to make it super easy. I think you'll see it in a lot of our marketing stuff. We always talk about, easy, 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 because that's the thing that we hear back from customers all the time. So
100%. Thank you very much for that. So saving you time, like building a new inventory of services, as I said, doing kind of that technology review or an account review, if you will, sourcing quotes, running down issues, in addition to us helping implement services that you may be getting that are new. If a couple of months down the line, if we help you with something and you just don't feel like you're getting anywhere with maybe that carrier, we're going to act as an advocate for you on your behalf and try to help escalate issues as they arise. We can finding the areas to reduce cost, ensuring that you aren't overspending. Occasionally like I said, we are an advocate, right? Or like a help desk, if you will. And occasionally we do an account review, and what you have seems to make the most sense. We know what the rates are currently for all of the carriers. And sometimes you're on a good, sometimes you've got a good deal. And the advice is stay where you're at. Let's see where you're at when, in the next 6 months to a year, we'll revisit it. We don't want to do anything that's going to be business interrupting for saving, $5 a month or whatever that may be. We don't want to reinvent the wheel at all, but we do find some pretty significant savings.
Yeah, and the technology changes over time. They do different bundling promotions. They do renewal promotions. Sometimes, it's just a matter of sifting through it and taking a look at what you have on a periodic basis. We usually recommend that we do an account review with you at least once a year. Some of our larger customers that have a lot of stuff going on, we'll do that more frequently, but at least once a year. And we try to make that, again, super easy on you. We'll already have sort of your inventory of services. And so it would be just talking about kind of your future plans to either acquire, other businesses, open up new locations that you're turning down, that kind of thing that may impact what we want to go look at for you. So.
Great point. Yes. So vendors, I mentioned briefly, we partner with pretty much almost everything that you could possibly, every partner you could possibly think of for technology. There are some little, local internet providers that maybe we don't partner with. But for the most part, all of your major carriers for voice over IP, for internet service, for wireless, we partner with and can help you go to bid. If you're in an area that just has really terrible internet connections and you haven't really looked at who else is in the area in a while, we can help do that. That's actually fairly common. As technology expands, you may have somebody available in your area that you're not aware of. We can help you source that.
Yeah, and I would say, most of the time it looks like customers asking us just, hey, we're opening up a new location here. We're going to need phones, internet, mobile, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll just go kind of see what's available, come back, sift through the options. And again, make it super simple. It's not that we're asking you, hey, check from these pre-approved vendors to see which one. It's just conversations, right? So you just reach out to Kristen, say, hey, here's what we've got going on. Want to take a look at this, and then we'll go do as much of the work behind the scenes as we can so that you don't have to waste a bunch of time. And we, find that most of the customers, that's helps them a lot, saves them a lot of time, or their people's time dealing with it. So.
Sure. So just to dive in a little bit on the different products, connectivity, internet, everybody knows the word internet. There's different flavors of internet, as I'm sure most of you know. We're going to help you basically decide which is going to fit your needs. Maybe you have multiple locations that you'd like to connect, whether it's connecting for, data transferring, having, one central location where you have visibility on the services of those other locations. We have, partners and products that can help that. When you are sourcing new internet connections, I'm sure some of you have had to deal with this, where there's construction involved and they have to build that, service to the building. It can be fairly daunting. You can get a timeline initially of, let's say, 90 days, and it ends up being 6 months. Our team of project managers helps keep those carriers on their timelines, keeps them honest, and kind of holds their feet to the fire. In addition to that, with contracts, some carriers have auto renewals on them that you may not know. It may not be the best fit for you anymore, and you might want to switch. Staying on top of those contracts is another thing that we will help with. So we've got a team that's going to look at those renewals before they come up, make sure that you're not auto renewed, and kind of help you keep on what those market rates are. Internet as a whole decreases about 20% on average, right? Every 2 years. So it's important to stay on top of that. You wouldn't know that. And a lot of people just aren't paying attention.
Until it crashes into zero, and then all internet is free everywhere. Probably won't happen, but yeah, things change. They increase the speeds, they do other promos and things like that. And again, some of the products that we're talking about here are just sort of the more popular products. We can really, we have access to all of the products from all of the carriers everywhere. So, there's some of them that get pretty nuanced and pretty specific as you get in there that most people, don't need or care about. But we do have access to all of that. So, the full takeaway is, as we have that individual conversations with you, kind of go through your current services and needs, we may uncover some other things that are outside these product scopes that would make sense, again, from those carriers that we work with.
Sure. UCaaS and CCaaS, in other words, voice over IP phone systems, right? As most of you know, CCaaS gets more into the contact center of service. If you've got a large sales team, maybe that is fielding calls, you've got your own dispatch team that you're managing. We have teams of experts on staff that can help you vet that. As I mentioned briefly, maybe give some analytics or visibility on the calls of your staff, whether it's recording, if you've got an angry client, and maybe there's a coaching opportunity there for, one of your employees, or, software that can help you kind of staff or forecast staffing for a certain time. We've got a lot of technology that can kind of help increase that productivity, and definitely save some time as well.
Kristen, I don't think anybody on this call has any angry customers, so I don't know if that's going to apply.
No, I'm sorry, I did not mean to offend. You're exactly right. I know all of your customers are extremely happy. But this is one size does not fit all with this. And with that giant portfolio of partners and vendors that we have, even throughout the Authority Brands franchisees, one size does not fit all. We have some very general ideas, but We find it very important to kind of dive deep into your needs. And we spend a lot of time on that.
And in the larger piece, and I know a lot of the authority brands, they already have stuff set up, but it sort of expands into just handling calls and what you're doing with those. So auto attendance and dispatching and getting those calls to the right people at the right times and reporting on that stuff. Because sometimes we get a call like, no, we're fine with the phones, but we need to have this one other project or service line that we just need to kind of redirect calls. It still is in that UCaaS platform, that we can handle those types of needs. So anything that you have on your wish list that's just not getting done with your current system or setup or call handling, we can help with that too.
Right. It doesn't always have to be finding something new. Sometimes you have features on your system that you have no idea about, and we can help with that too.
Yep.
So mobility, this always kind of seems to be a hot button with everybody, especially if you have a lot of cell phones, a lot of tablets. It's a lot harder to manage than most other services because there's just a lot that changes, right? You have employees that are leaving or turnover, what have you. There's just probably a lot more changes within wireless than there is with most services. So again, access to all of the networks. There's potential for discounts. A lot of the, as far as savings goes, a lot of that comes down to changing carriers. We have partners in this space that actually can do multi-carrier pooling, meaning if you've got techs that are, in a fairly large area and you need a Verizon or an AT&T, for example, and you've got to pay both of those bills, we have partners that can actually bring those together, give you one bill across multiple carriers to make sure that you're getting that service, but it's not as hard to manage. There's some pretty neat portals that they have in place too that kind of keep on those lines. They can see when those lines are not in use and just kind of be a little bit more proactive. Sometimes people go through this exercise of us analyzing these bills and realize that they've got lines of service that have not been in use for years, right? Occasionally just this exercise finds you savings from us just looking at it. And yes, the big up to 58% in monthly savings when you change carriers, that is an up to. I will not sit and guarantee every single person on here that you're going to save 58%. Occasionally, like I said, we do this exercise, you find your own savings. Sometimes you're on a great grandfathered plan. And again, my advice to you is stay on that. It doesn't seem like we need to do any changes, but occasionally we find some huge savings. A lot of the, worries of people when they hear changing carriers is that it's going to be this kind of big disastrous implementation process. And sometimes it's really as easy as keeping your own phones and just changing SIM cards. The other thing is, I know, for example, in Arizona that there are pockets where one provider works and one does not. So we're going to make sure that we check those coverage maps before we try to do a recommendation. No, who cares if you save 58% if none of your service works? We're not going to make that recommendation to you. We're really going to be proactive about that change.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've seen with some of the aggregators and stuff is there's a lot more kind of front end notifications to find errors, prevent overages and things like that, where it seems like sometimes the carriers directly, it's all reactive, or they just sort of send it out, and then when you call and go, why'd my bill double, and then sort of figure it out and do something. So from a management perspective, you've got a lot of different devices in play. We found that can be helpful for managing it and again just keeping your costs down on the front end before they even happen. The other one that I was going to mention on the last slide, you were talking about the UCaaS and then mobility. Sometimes that gets blended together too. So one of the things that we get from franchise owners and other business owners is I want to be able to call customers back from my cell phone, but I don't want them to have my personal cell phone because that's a problem. So a lot of times they'll carry two phones. They got their personal and their business phone. If you've already switched over to a hosted provider and you're already doing that, that's one of the things that we can accomplish with that. So you can make business calls so it looks like you're calling from the office, but you're actually calling from your cell. And that just helps with, again, more the executive level type stuff where you don't necessarily want them to have your cell phone.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then our process. So what does all of this look like? If you're, an existing franchise owner, you've been in business for a while, you haven't had anybody take a look at your services, we will review everything that you have. We can review, make recommendations, suggest improvements. We'll find you the options. If there is an improvement to be made, we will find you the options. We choose a solution. Essentially, you choose the solution. We will bring you options. We help advocate through that. We will make recommendations. But and then in addition, which is usually a big one, depending on the service, be there to hold your hand essentially during implementing any changes that are being made. And then, as mentioned, provide support on that back end. So we're going to make, all the way up until your first bill to make sure that that is exactly what you signed up for. And then help do escalations throughout as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I think I touched on it earlier. We're in it for you, or in it with you for the long haul. We've been doing it for 20 years, and so we're going to be there when you're making the choices and installing it, and then 3 or 5 years later, and we're needing to pivot to something else, or your business has changed, or you're buying something else, you need to merge something. We just keep making those changes with you. So you can continue that relationship, you can have that continuity, and just that confidence that we sort of know the history of where you've been, so we're not making the same mistakes that you had made in the past as we go forward. And that seems to be what customers really like about kind of our process.
Great point. So how to get started? The easiest way is going to be giving me a call, sending me an email, or you can do a request form on our website. And I look forward to talking to all of you, hopefully. So we'll go ahead and open it up.
Great. Thank you both to Kristen and Jake for presenting about city communications today. We will now address any questions that we received during the session. I do want to remind you that you can submit your questions throughout the Q&A by using the function in your control panel. Okay, so the first question that we have is, how do we help cut our cell phone costs? What does that look like?
Sure, that's a great question. So we will do a review of the bill. As I very briefly mentioned, the costs come in for the most part in switching carriers, right? So again, we've got a partner that resells essentially an aggregator, if you will, your AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or what have you. We will do a complete analysis on your data usage, how many lines you have, and see if it makes sense to do that carrier switch. Now, like I said, if there are certain parts of your area that let's say work better with Verizon versus AT&T, for example, you can keep a percentage of those lines on that carrier if you know that switching is just not going to be an option. And then, like I said, we'll check that coverage map as well to make sure that we're not going to switch you over completely if it doesn't make sense. But for the most part, the savings comes in with changing over carriers.
Another question. What's the process for changing wireless carriers? Is it complicated? What does that look like?
That's a good question. No, not always. Um, it can be as simple, most of the time you can use your own devices that you have. So a lot of times it's just changing a SIM card. Um, the SIM cards can be shipped either to you directly, and you can distribute those to your field techs or your employees, or they can actually just be sent with a little kit and activation instructions directly to the employees.
Yeah, and if we're doing new phones, if it's a complete overhaul, then there's a whole team that coordinates getting the phones out to everybody, getting those provisioned, and then coordinating the port over to the new devices. So really try to eliminate as many of the time obstacles that you would normally have if you're having to do all that yourself. So we've got a lot of people behind the scenes to make it all smooth.
Also, how much does it cost for analysis or to have you help with source services?
That is a great question. It costs nothing for us to help. We are consultants, we partner with the carriers. It does not cost our end customers anything to help source any of these services.
And so normally then the follow-up question is, well, then how do you get paid? So the carriers compensate us for placing and managing orders. We're not reselling it or rebilling their services. All the contracts that you do are with the carriers directly, but they can pay us rather than paying a direct salesperson to do that. It actually ends up being cheaper for them, so they kind of prefer to do that. But the nice thing is we have access again to all of the carriers and products, so it doesn't really matter as much where you have a direct sales rep that's kind of trying to sell one product from one thing and try and deliver die by that one sale. Ours is more consultative, so we're just trying to find the best solution for you, and we can do that at no cost to you. The other follow-up to that is, well, then are the services, is it more expensive or absolutely not? So it's the exact same pricing that you would get working with them directly. We have access to the same pricing and promotions, same products, same everything. And then you also have access to their tech support, their engineers, all of that. So that you don't lose anything by placing orders through us. You just gain us as a second level of support, not only on the front end, but also on the back end. And sometimes that can be helpful, especially if you're having issues with billing or service or something like that. If you're a small company and you have $100 cable internet connection with one carrier and you call in and you're like, this is, ruining my business. They kind of put it there and they're like, it's a $100 service. I don't know what to tell you, run it through customer service. But when we're calling in on behalf or escalating an issue, we're representing kind of our 20 years of customers and services. So it's a little bit bigger stick. We've got different access up through the authority chain to kind of fast track issues. So we find that that can be helpful in some of those types of situations.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying, Jake. So this might have already been answered, but one of the questions that came through was seeking for clarity on if City Communications is a third party to find other vendors that makes sense, or is it about verifying pricing and services? So could you provide a little bit more clarity around type of provider Communications is?
I think it's both, right, Jake? Wouldn't you pretty much agree with that? It's
Yeah.
both. We'll do both. We're going to do, a technology review for, like I said, what you have currently. And if there is sourcing to be had, then yes, we are, that third party, if you will, that will go out and source other products. I think, did I answer that? Was that clear?
Yeah, I think if I was hearing it right, Erica, it's you're just asking, are we rebilling the stuff or we're sourcing it?
Yeah, so there The question was if City Communications acts as a third party to find vendors or to also, and I think you already addressed this, Kristen, also to verify and help with pricing as well as services.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the front and the back end of the overall process. So yeah, on the front end, start with get all your current invoices, take a look at them, see how that looks. Sometimes it's renegotiating your existing services with your existing carriers and talking about that. Sometimes there might be an opportunity or recommendation to switch to another provider. It's really kind of individual case basis on that. And then obviously babysitting the orders as they go through to make sure that they get installed correctly and are billed correctly. And each one, whenever we do these kinds of group discussions, everybody has their own individual situation with their own individual needs and carriers and mix and all of that. And so it really, the best thing to do is start with kind of an individual conversation. Pull your invoices or have your accounting person pull your invoices and just go, here's what we have. Here's all the things that are sort of in that sphere of phone systems and internets and mobile and data, and maybe it applies and maybe it doesn't, but we can sift through that, and then we'll end up kind of creating a full inventory for you to then talk through, how's this working? Is this good? Oh, we should, make changes and save money here and in here. So it's I think we kind of fast track that process, but that's really the best way to sort of dive in and help us find whatever savings we can find for you.
Okay, great. If there are any other questions we didn't address on today's presentation, we will follow up with you. I think that primarily covers it. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And I know I enjoyed learning about City Communications and some of the offerings that they have to provide. Again, we will follow up with the recording as well as a deck. Please reach out directly to Kristen or myself if you have any additional questions. And it was a pleasure to have everyone today.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks everybody that jumped on.
Okay, thanks for your time.